Okay, so we've learned a little bit about operation functions in terms of the sum and difference operations. Now, let's see a few kind of, well, maybe more difficult looking questions on how you would do something like this. So we're told that if h of x equals the difference between f minus g of x and f of x equals 5x plus 2, determine gx. Okay, so if we look at A, let's quickly kind of recall that h of x, if it looks like this form, we can put it in this form. And I find this form a lot easier to read personally, where it is f of x minus g of x. Okay, now a way we can go about solving this is we are given h of x. Sometimes you might just be able to visually see and know the answer immediately, but for more difficult questions, it's usually better to just substitute h of x for the equation that it is, substitute your known function with that equation, and then solve for the function you're looking for, in this case g of x. So h of x right here, I'm going to substitute in for the equation. Negative 2x squared plus 16x plus 8. Then you're given the function here, 5x plus 2. Okay, so I'm going to substitute f of x for its equation, put it in brackets, 5x plus 2, and that's subtracting g of x, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for g of x. So now you can simply solve this like a variable. You're going to move everything to one side except for g of x. So isolate for g of x. Okay, so what is that going to look like? Well, I'm going to minus 5x from both sides, and I'm going to get negative 2x squared plus 11x plus 8 equals 2 minus g of x. I'm going to subtract 2. I guess it would probably make more sense to write it by its like term. So negative 2x squared plus 11x plus 6 equals negative gx. And now at this point, you're not quite done. If you finish there and you say g of x equals this equation here, that's not true, because we still have this negative to worry about. So there's multiple different ways to solve for it. I'm going to see it as if it's a negative 1 multiplying our g of x, so I'm going to divide negative 1 from both sides. And that's going to simply change all of your signs questions. So, or sorry, all of your signs of your coefficients. So that becomes positive 2x squared minus 11x minus 6 equals g of x. And that's what g of x equals. So let's quickly go and look over question B, okay? And it's the exact same kind of idea. We know what h of x is. H of x is this equation. We know that h of x equals f of x minus g of x. And we're also given f of x being this equation here. Okay, f of x. So let's substitute those things in. I'm going to substitute h of x for its equation. So the root of x minus 4 plus 3x minus 4, that equals f of x. Well, I'm going to substitute f of x for its equation. I'm going to bracket it just to make sure I know that's f of x. And I'm going to subtract g of x. And from that point, you're simply solving for g of x again. So you could technically get rid of these brackets now. I just do it so I note that, okay, this is my f of x. Everything's adding and subtracting, nothing's really multiplying each other together or multiplying inside the brackets, so you can leave it without brackets. So I'm going to minus 5x. I'm going to do two steps here. I'm going to minus 5x and I'm going to minus 2 from both sides. Minus 5x and minus 2. So that means I'm going to be left with x minus 4, 3x minus 5x. That will give me, negative 2x. Negative 4 minus 2 gives me negative 6, and that equals negative gx. And yet again, you have a negative in front here, so I'm going to see that as negative 1 times g of x, and I'm going to divide that negative 1 out, creating everything here to flip its sign. So this will actually become negative square root x minus 4 minus 2x, or sorry, plus 2x plus 6. And that equals your g of x equation.